Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Crypto Hipster Podcast. This is your host, the Crypto Hipster, Jamil Hassan, where I interview founders, thought leaders, entrepreneurs, executives, artists, musicians, gaming people, everybody in crypto and blockchain all around the world. And I have an amazing guest today coming to us from Berlin. His name is Onur Akpalat. He is he's leading the Builders program at the Interchain Developer Academy. Honor, welcome.
Thanks for having me. Hey, Jamil.
Very welcome. Very welcome. So let's kick things off with the first question is what is your background and is it a logical background for what you're doing now?
I hope so. So my name is Honor. I'm from Berlin. I'm a father of three, and I've been working in tech and startup ecosystem. I would say all my life. The idea of working for a big corporation never really did it for me. So when I started my career around 10 years ago, the first thing I did was start my own company, and that was kind of in the traditional, let's call it traditional Web2 world, software as a service. But around 6 years ago, I kind of transitioned to the blockchain space. And that being said, my background is computer science. I'm a data scientist by training. And I've always been interested into just like building digital products in general. Yeah, and two and a half years ago, I kind of joined Interchain and kind of have been working in the Cosmos ecosystem. And I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, but I think it's one of the most interesting spaces, even within the blockchain space right now.
Okay, so I've heard I've been more like a Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum guy, right? So I don't not too familiar. I know Cosmos exists. I've interviewed somebody from Cosmos, but I don't really familiar with what you guys do really well, better than everybody else. Could you let me know?
Yes, for sure. So the Cosmos and Interchain ecosystem in its heart consists of an open source technology stack. That technology stack allows anyone in the world to build blockchains. This is why Cosmos sometimes is also referred to as, the Internet of blockchains, because rather than having everything going on in a single blockchain, which could be Bitcoin or Ethereum, we believe that there will be multiple blockchains in the future which fulfill multiple different purposes. And the underlying toolkit for that is, in its core, three things. Number one, it's Tendermint, which is the consensus engine. Number two, it's the Cosmos SDK, which is a toolkit that gives you certain primitives that allows you to build blockchains. And number three is basically IBC, which is the intercommunication protocol, which allows you to communicate between these different blockchains. Because, for example, when you mention Ethereum, one understood concept in Ethereum is shared security, which means you can deploy decentralized applications on Ethereum. They all live on the same layer, which allows you to have synchronous composability between different applications in the same block even, right? But this becomes very, very hard when you have different blockchains because there's, you basically need to bridge a huge gap from one blockchain to another. And the interchain ecosystem just makes this way more, at least harmonious and standardized. So this is kind of the interchain and Cosmos stack in a nutshell. So the whole idea is sovereign blockchain. So whenever I want to have a sovereign blockchain, rather than opting into someone else's blockchain, I would go for Cosmos. One analogy here is cities or nations, right? Like if I move into a city as a resident, I need to comply with their laws, and rightfully so. And if I have a different need, and if my kind of understanding of whatever justice or culture for economic and cultural exchange is different, I would either go ahead and move to another city, or I would create my own city. And this is the whole idea of Cosmos.
Creating your own city. How would you do that? Sounds pretty cool.
I mean, this is actually really cool because I think if you look at the creation of some of these like networks today, I find it very similar to, how cities or banks were created, let's say, a couple hundred years ago. And what I mean by that is, just to drive a few analogies, when banks were created, like when you had like precious metals or before paper money was invented, you basically would, put your gold and you would kind of get a piece of paper that you have deposited something. And all of a sudden, like this piece of paper started to become valuable and people didn't even like go to the underlying bank. They just like started exchanging these papers. But this took like 400 years. And similar to the Wild West, I think this is why the term exists, is these things were robbed and broke all the time. And this is exactly what we are seeing in blockchains right now. Like these things break and are exploited all the time. Um, and you know, I I mean I don't know because I didn't live in that time and I didn't honestly like I didn't do the research, but my guess is that if you would ask people in like a couple hundred years ago what they think about this piece of paper and banks, I'm sure like many would have said the exact same thing that they say about blockchains today.
I guess I think so too. That sounds yeah. Um, that'd be a great study.
Sure.
Let me talk about the primary focus today. And the primary focus today is the Interchain Developer Academy, right? I want to find out what your focus is there and how does it all work.
Yeah, so for builders or developers, we have two key initiatives. One is the Interchain Developer Academy, and one is the Interchain Builders Program. Like you said in the beginning, I'm kind of working with the Interchain Builders Program, which is basically a structure for teams that are interested in building a blockchain with the Cosmos stack. And what we do there in the Builders Program is we support them all the way from incorporation, fundraising, go-to-market, architecture, bootstrapping their validator set, whatever you want. Basically, it's a white glove system to help chains build whatever they want to build. The Interchain Developer Academy, which is I think the topic for today, and what you brought up earlier, is a more open program for every individual person that is interested in becoming a developer in the Cosmos. So, there doesn't need to be an idea, there doesn't need to be a business or anything like that. If you are interested in becoming an engineer, a software developer in the Interchain ecosystem, then the Interchain Developer Academy is for you. It's basically a 9-week program. It's a scope program. It has a syllabus. It has week by week, different topics are covered, and it teaches you all the way from what Cosmos is to how you can program your own blockchain in Cosmos, or an application around blockchains, right? Because it's not just building blockchains; you also need things around it, such as light clients and wallets and decentralized applications and so on. So it's a scope program for people that are interested in becoming software developers.
Okay. And so for example, say I have like old school programming experience like SQL, right? But
Mm.
I never learned JavaScript. I never learned Solidity. I didn't learn any of the crypto blockchain languages. How easily of a transition would it be to be able to learn and be part of your program?
So you're basically describing as someone that already has kind of technical experience in programming. That is always beneficial. And if you are looking kind of to get a job at a blockchain company afterwards, I think that makes a lot of sense, and that is kind of the ideal candidate. So that sounds very feasible to me. Even though SQL is more kind of a, let's say, some people wouldn't call it a programming language. Some people would call it more kind of um, a language to communicate with databases and kind of query certain data sets. But at the end of the day, I think it's a solid understanding of how that works. That will be very helpful. Um, so basic programming experience is definitely very beneficial because I think this is an easy win for everyone to just kind of spend a few weeks on basic programming experience. And you mentioned JavaScript, it could be Python, could be any other language, to just basically increase the success trajectory for this program. I would say that in theory, um, no programming experience is required. However, as with any things, it would be very beneficial.
Understand? Sounds good. So let's describe before I get into a few more questions. Let's talk about that interchain stack. You mentioned it briefly earlier. You said the SDK. You said you have Tendermint. I want to find out how the interchain stack works because I'm interested in having people be able to like make new careers for themselves if they understand it.
Yeah, so let's start with Tendermint. Tendermint is basically so-called PBFT, Byzantine fault tolerant consensus or replication engine. So all it does, and this is kind of in the core of many blockchains, is it basically is the system that allows different nodes to agree and replicate a certain state. I think we all know how Bitcoin works or Ethereum works. So these are all decentralized databases. But in order to agree on the logical state of the databases, there needs to be a system, right? Bitcoin has their proof of work system, and the Cosmos ecosystem right now has Tendermint. And Tendermint is kind of the replication engine for, I would say, 99% of the Cosmos chains out there today. So it basically is the consensus engine that makes it so that there's a state that's agreed upon and that's replicated. And then on top of that, which is more focused on building blockchains, there's the Cosmos SDK. Because if you think about building building blockchains, you have certain things over and over again. What do you have? You want to send tokens. You maybe want to have a governance system that allows you to vote. You probably want to have a staking system that allows, in a proof of stake network, that allows you to stake your tokens or and be rewarded with staking rewards from the emission schedule. You probably want to have some sort of slashing mechanism if people double sign or if the validator is offline for more than, let's say, 10 hours. So there's certain things that you can think of any blockchain would need, and all these modules are standardized in the Cosmos SDK. So instead of having to rewrite these, you could basically just use the default modules, and you can even adjust the modules to your needs. So if you think about it in that sense, with the Cosmos SDK, you can spin up a blockchain in 5 minutes, but it wouldn't do anything, right? It would just be a vanilla blockchain that allows you to send messages from wallet A to wallet B. So it wouldn't be very useful. And that's why application-specific blockchains, they allow developers to focus on their domain expertise and on their specific application rather than having to build the standard things that I just described.
That makes sense. So let's talk about those specific things, right? There are some certain initiatives that you're taking to onboard developers, right? So what are those initiatives? And then we'll get into some more stuff. Yeah.
Are you referring to kind of the Interchain Developers Academy and the Builders Program?
Yeah, you're looking at get people involved and into that, and you're taking some initiatives to do
Yes,
that. So I want to find out what those are.
exactly. So those are exactly the Interchain Developer Academy and the Builders Program. So the Interchain Developer Academy is performed in batches. The last batch was December 1st, and it's ongoing, and it's going to be concluded early next year. So if you're interested, you can basically go to interchainacademy.cosmos.network and kind of be on the outlook for the next batch. The next batch is going to be, I mean, there are no exact dates yet, but somewhere around end of Q1, beginning of Q2 next year. So this is when the next batch starts. As described, the batches are 9 weeks. And kind of to give you a rough outline of the program, right? So week 0, getting started, blockchain basics, introductions into Golang. Golang is the main language in which the Cosmos ecosystem is developed. Week 2 is introductions to Cosmos itself. And here there's SDK basics that I just described, also like how do accounts work, how do transactions work, and so on and so forth. Week 2 would be the first steps. So how do I run a node? How do I interact with the CLI, with the command line interface, and so on? Week 3, for example, is focusing on IBC and CosmJS, so the intercommunication protocol that I just described earlier, and the list goes on and on. I don't want to get too technical here, but basically the continuation of this is just like from the basics, start to build small applications, also do a deep dive into IBC because IBC is a core part of the ecosystem. And then the last the last week would basically be build an MVP kind of production system, whatever that is, because we think that all this theory and knowledge is nice, but at the end of the day, having something tangible at the end would be amazing. So this is kind of the Interchain Developer Academy. Kind of taking a step back from that and diving into the Builders program. The Builders program is completely different. The Builders program consists of people that have helped and launched chains in the past themselves. And it has almost like an a la carte menu. And if as a founder with an idea and a team you join, depending on your needs, we help you to achieve those. For example, you might be in the process of fundraising, you need to refine your deck and need introductions to investors. That's one way. Or you have funding secured, but you have specific technical questions regarding your architecture and you need to refine and audit your architecture. That's two. Or you're about to launch your blockchain, but you need validators to help secure your network. And maybe you're interested in designing an incentivized testnet, or you want to kind of get a model to have validators participate in your network, because validators are the people that will secure your network, at least for sovereign chains. That's when we connect you to validators and you help you. But at the same time, today Cosmos has more ways to launch products rather than like application specific chains. Even if you are an Ethereum project and you have like an EVM Solidity contract today, now we have EVM zones in Cosmos. So you could deploy on those and we help you kind of educate you on how this works. We also have another execution environment that is called CosmWasm. It's, as the name suggests, it's based on WASM, on WebAssembly. And this is another execution environment, and we have chains that allow you to deploy your decentralized application. So it's complex, and kind of we help you to navigate, understand what type of security are you looking for, what type of ecosystem do you want to build on top, because Cosmos in its nature is very, very decentralized, all the way from like the legal structure behind the system and the fact that there's multiple entities maintaining the ecosystem, to the technology, to kind of the blockchain itself.
Awesome. So, I was looking at Cosmos the other day, and I was looking at some of the other, blockchains that were impacted recently in this bear market. And it seems to me that Cosmos is not as impacted as some others, right? Why?
Yeah.
How did you guys achieve that stability, and why is that important for as we go through this bear market, however longer that takes? What have you done that's really worked well?
I think the question is probably more what have we not done, and I think what we haven't done is solely build the foundation of this ecosystem funded by VCs. And VCs are a key part of this ecosystem, and in no way would I want to discredit them. However, one thing I've seen is if an ecosystem is overexposed with VC capital, usually when these unwinds happen, funds are forced to liquidate. I mean, there's kind of a whole process behind how risk management happens and when these liquidations need to happen and why they need to happen. But what we're seeing right now is, many funds and many institutions just de-risk because of the uncertainty and risk in the ecosystem right now, which means that ecosystems that are overexposed to VC capital just suffer from more sell pressure because at the end of the day, all these things will hit the market. And I would say Cosmos has done a good job in organically growing most of the networks. I mean, if you look at ecosystems such as Solana, for example, I think it's a great ecosystem. However, there was much more VC capital involved. And to give you one example in the Cosmos ecosystem, which is a chain called Juno, it's a general purpose WASM chain. There was zero VC capital. It's a completely bootstrapped chain, and the distribution happened through an airdrop. So there are no VCs, or if VCs are in, they just had to acquire the assets on the market like everyone else. There were no there were no privileged early deals, let's say. I think this is part of the success secret for the Cosmos ecosystem, but not entirely. The other thing is basically Cosmos has a lot of the infrastructure that you need to survive a bear market. They just have themselves and built into the network. For example, there's a DEX DeFi chain, which is called Osmosis. So if you are a product with an asset and you need liquidity, you don't need to go talk to centralized exchanges. You can just do it in a decentralized way within the Cosmos. If you need lending, there's something else. If you need an Oracle, there's something in the Cosmos that you can use. So in that sense, I would say that now we're seeing the network effects come to life because there's so many things out there. But at the end of the day, I think even Cosmos is suffering from this downturn, even though it's not as severe as other ecosystems. But working with teams that are currently fundraising, even if it's on a smaller scale, it's definitely gotten rougher out there.
Got it. So you mentioned DeFi, you mentioned middleware, Oracle is mentioned. How about if I'm an artist? And you mentioned Solana earlier. I'm an artist. How can I bring my skills to the table to join, your ecosystem?
I would say in general, if you're an artist in the real world today, you would move to a city that helps you to facilitate economic and cultural exchange for your art, whatever the art is, right? So you would probably move to, depending on if you're a musician or if you're a painter or whatever you do, you would choose a city that accommodates and is kind of interesting in that regard. So the same way here, for example, if you're a digital artist and you create, let's say, digital art and paintings or something like that, you could utilize NFTs in Cosmos, and I think NFTs are a common system. It's a crypto primitive that allows you to build and distribute unique pieces. And again, like with every other art in the world, buyers can use that NFT or purchase that NFT to build a commercial and emotional relationship with the artist. In Cosmos today, there are a couple chains that help you do that. One example is Stargaze. Stargaze is a NFT marketplace zone. It's solely focused on NFTs, and if you want to go that route, you can use that. There's also a chain called Omniflix, which is more focusing on also gaming and NFTs. So if you're more looking into building inventory type of NFTs, that's another interesting project you can look at. But there's also other general purpose chains that you can utilize. For example, I just mentioned we have general purpose EVM chains similar to Ethereum that you can utilize.
Awesome. So I asked that because you're building your real personnel to help develop the chain, and you have people who it's beneficial to programmers to join. But how can people? What are some of the technical and non-technical skills that you think will help people get into this next generation of the crypto spring that's going to come?
That is a very difficult question, Jamil. That is a very difficult question because I think we're still so early that a lot of the work I'm seeing is focusing on the underlying infrastructure. And now, taking another example, for example, if you would ask the people that built the internet, right, like the protocols such as TCP/IP, HTTP back then, on how the future would look like I'm not sure if they would be able to see, and also liked what the internet became. So in that sense, it's hard to answer for me. The only thing I'm seeing is the following. I don't think the world is going to be crypto versus non-crypto or blockchain versus non-blockchain. I think, blockchains will provide certain primitives that at the end of the day will be superior to the alternatives. And why are they superior? Because they're more secure, more transparent, and cheaper. Let me give you examples for 3 primitives. The simplest one is payment. What do we have today? We have credit cards, we have Stripe, maybe we have a couple other vendors. And it's already way better than before, because imagine the world before, how fragmented everything was. And sometimes you had to go to places to deposit cash and send to another country. That's way easier. But I think blockchain are definitely making that even easier than it is with existing centralized trusted systems today. Um, a second example in my mind is let's call it authentication. So authentication is basically when you think about like username passwords, um, you you have a system that is potentially decades old and requires you to store a bunch of different passwords. However, I think a wallet-based security is much simpler, and it allows you to have kind of public-private key cryptography, and that is much simpler than having to maintain 500 passwords, use a password manager. I think like this system will work. So in the future, if I want to authenticate and do something and verify that it's me, I will just use my wallet. And then the third thing would be membership. So for example, I have and the third system in my mind are membership primitives. So membership can have many forms. We have maybe a gym membership, maybe we have a membership for a game or like another online tool. And usually they all work the same and it's all interrelated, right? Like I have some login, I have some billing system and some payment, and as long as I pay, I maintain my membership. But I think, for example, NFTs, something that you mentioned earlier, could be the primitives that will revolutionize memberships, because it could be so that if I have a wallet, it's the second thing that I just mentioned, the public-private key cryptography for signing, and I do have an NFT in that wallet, which is the third thing, membership, that I'm describing right now. That gives me access to certain content, or even in the physical world to certain venues. Like I can show my wallet that I have this NFT that I either got or acquired somewhere. And this is so crazy because you can even think of it this way. Like if you're an artist and you put your art, your artifacts into NFTs, and then users hold these NFTs, then other artists could basically distribute their art based on your the people that have your art. You know what I mean? And brands can do the same. If brands really like an artist, they can say, hey, I want to distribute this voucher or access to this new product that I'm building, or access to this venue and this concert that I'm creating to certain people that hold an NFT. And that is open. Like no one can prevent that. So it's almost like a new level of composability, both financially, but also from a relationship perspective with peers that didn't exist before. And I know some of these are still relatively abstract and not super specific, but this is how I see kind of the future and how everyone will use blockchains in the future. They won't even know that they will use blockchains, right? Like the payment that you do in a couple of years from now will be powered by a blockchain and you won't know it. The ticket that you use to get access to some sort of membership might be powered by an NFT and you don't know it. And the wallet you maintain to sign certain transaction and authenticate that it's you will be powered by public-private key cryptography and you won't notice it. So this is kind of my view of the future. And I think right now, because we are in the infrastructure stage, we're still calling it blockchain, we're still calling it DeFi, we're still calling it whatever we call it. But I think these all need to be abstracted.
I agree. So, I could see that happening too down the line. I want to bring back to something you said almost early on, real earlier on, like first couple minutes. You said it's important to create self sovereignty, right? So an individual has access to these three things: the payments, the authentication, and the membership. Would that make them self sovereign, or is there something else that needs to be there too for them to become that self sovereign individual?
I would say that it definitely helps them to become a sovereign individual, because you would need to so on the one hand, if you compare it to today, I doubt that most people, have a pile of cash under their pillow, right? So there's a custodian that manages it for them, which is usually a bank. And in privileged societies, we might not notice that. But it's not uncommon for banks to freeze bank accounts. That happens every day. And, sometimes rightfully so, but other times there might be compliance requirements. For example, if you happen to live in a country such as Iran or maybe Crimea in Ukraine or another region of the world that happens to be sanctioned, you might just be unlucky, and it's very hard for you to become sovereign all over the world. So I think blockchain technology definitely, because it's permissionless and decentralized, helps. On the other hand, the way I just described those systems work together in the future, I just said it's not going to be blockchain versus old world. It's going to be a mix and melting pot of both. We're already seeing that. We're already seeing on Ethereum that I think 70% of the blocks are so-called OFAC compliant. What does that mean? That means that certain type of transactions, such as using Tornado Cash for mixing, are not allowed. And most block producers or proposers comply with that. So we're already seeing kind of regulation kicking in even in blockchain land. So I think it might also be naive to think that blockchain technology itself will help make us all sovereign individuals. I think we still will have kind of consequences of regulation, whether it's for good or for bad.
I'm not going to get kinds of issues. So, I do, however, want to thank you very much for your time today. I've enjoyed speaking with you, and I'm going to research more about Cosmos as I build out my project. And it's going to take a little while, but I'm laying the bricks right now. But I do have one final question for you. Is this? How can people find out more information about you, about Cosmos ecosystem, about the Developer Academy, about any of the work you guys are doing and enjoying and be part of your ecosystem?
So I'm Honor Akpolat on Twitter. If you can spell that, or maybe there's a link that will help. Interchainacademy.cosmos.network is the URL for the Interchain Developer Academy, and then join.builders is the address for the Builders program. So these should probably be good entry points to explore the ecosystem and then enter the rabbit hole of Cosmos.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks, Jamil. It was a pleasure.